Israel's water supply has been poisoned, not disrupted, not damaged, not reduced to a trickle that millions cannot access, poisoned. 2 minutes ago, Iranian missiles struck the chemical storage and treatment infrastructure at Israel's largest water treatment facilities, and in the aftermath of those strikes, compounds were released into the water distribution network that are not safe for human consumption. The government knows Israel's environmental and water quality monitoring systems, which operate across its national water infrastructure, detected the contamination within minutes of the strikes. The Mekorot National Water Company, which runs Israel's water supply system, has the real-time data. The health ministry has been notified. The Prime Minister's office has been briefed. And the 8 million Israeli civilians connected to the contaminated distribution network have not been told. Not a single word. No do not drink advisory. No emergency broadcast telling people to stop using tap water immediately. No guidance on how to access alternative water sources while the contamination is assessed and addressed. Nothing. Across Israel right now, taps are running in homes, people are drinking from them, people are cooking with that water, people are giving it to their children. And the government, which knows the water is unsafe, is not telling them. This is not a military story. It is not about missiles, interceptors, command structures, or nuclear facilities. This is a story about 8 million people drinking poisoned water because the government that knows the water is poisoned has decided that the political consequences of telling them are worse than the health consequences of staying silent. In the next few minutes, I will show you exactly what Iran struck, what was released into Israel's water distribution network, the specific health consequences of those compounds and how quickly they appear, why the government is maintaining silence about a contamination event its own monitoring systems have already confirmed, and what 8 million people need to know right now that their government is not telling them. Before we get into it, thanks for watching. Your support is what keeps this going, and I genuinely appreciate every one of you here. Make sure you're subscribed and like the video so more people can follow this. Now let's get into it. To understand what Iran struck this morning and what it released into Israel's water supply, you need to understand how water treatment infrastructure functions and why targeting chemical storage and treatment facilities creates a completely different category of consequence than the infrastructure damage caused by the previous two strikes on Israel's water system. The first Iranian strike targeted the treatment and pumping facilities that move water through the distribution network. The result was simple: water stopped flowing, taps ran dry, millions had nothing to drink. That is a humanitarian crisis on a significant scale, and it received the response it deserved in terms of public awareness and government acknowledgement because the absence of water is immediately obvious. You turn on the tap and nothing comes out. The contamination crisis caused by this morning's strike is categorically more dangerous than the absence of water because it is not immediately visible. You turn on the tap and water flows. It looks like water. It smells like water. Depending on the compounds and their concentration, it may even taste like water. But it is not safe. Israel's water treatment system, like every modern municipal system, relies on chemical compounds to make raw water safe for consumption. Chlorine compounds are used for disinfection, fluoride compounds support dental health, coagulation chemicals remove suspended particles, pH adjustment chemicals prevent corrosion in distribution pipes. All of these chemicals are stored in large quantities at treatment facilities because the process requires continuous dosing at the scale of a national water system. The storage tanks are large, fixed, and present at every major facility. They are not hardened military targets. They are industrial chemical storage systems at civilian water plants. When an Iranian ballistic missile strikes a facility and detonates near that chemical storage infrastructure, those chemicals do not remain contained. They are released into the facility, into partially treated water in processing stages, and depending on damage patterns and pressure changes into the distribution network that carries water to homes, hospitals, schools, and businesses. The compounds released in this morning's strikes include chlorine at concentrations far above safe treatment levels. At proper dosing, chlorine is safe and effective. At the levels created by a storage tank release into the network, it becomes toxic. Ingestion leads to immediate gastrointestinal effects and sustained consumption results in serious health consequences. The release also includes coagulation chemicals. In Israel's system, these include aluminum sulfate and polyaluminum chloride. At treatment levels, they are safe. At the concentrations resulting from a storage tank rupture, they are not. Combined with debris and contamination from the strike itself, these chemicals create a water quality situation that no competent health authority would consider safe. And Israel's health authorities know this. Their monitoring systems have confirmed it, and the government they report to is not taking the one action that would most directly protect the population, telling them. Now let's talk about the health consequences, because this is where the government's silence becomes more dangerous with every passing minute. The most immediate effects of elevated chlorine exposure are gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramping, and diarrhea. These symptoms can appear within hours. For healthy adults, these effects are serious but manageable with medical care and alternative hydration. For children, the elderly, immunocompromised individuals, and hospitalized patients, the risks are greater and complications can develop more quickly. Hospitals in Israel, already under strain from weeks of sustained missile casualties, may begin receiving patients with these symptoms. Initially, those symptoms may be attributed to stress or other causes related to the ongoing conflict rather than contamination. Effective treatment depends on recognizing the cause. If the government does not disclose the contamination, medical staff are not alerted to look for it, patients are treated based on incorrect assumptions, and the most appropriate interventions are delayed. That delay, multiplied across the number of patients affected, is not hypothetical, it is inevitable, it is a direct consequence of silence. The aluminum compounds introduce another layer of concern. Short-term exposure produces similar gastrointestinal symptoms. Long-term exposure, however, has been associated in research with neurological effects in vulnerable populations. The immediate crisis is acute illness, but the same silence preventing an effective response now will also prevent accurate long-term health tracking. Without disclosure, there is no clear record of exposure, who was affected, for how long, and at what levels. The government's silence today becomes tomorrow's data gap. Now, why maintain that silence? The logic is political. It follows a familiar calculation. What is the cost of disclosure versus the cost of concealment? Telling millions of people not to drink their water after already telling them days ago that the system had been struck, then that it was restored, adds to the government's credibility burden. Each disclosure reinforces the perception of failure. Recent events: the Dimona burning, the Tel Aviv nuclear warhead, the IDF headquarters darkened, the power grid destroyed, the generals killed already weigh heavily. Another admission adds to that accumulation. Silence, by contrast, buys time. Time to attempt mitigation, time to restore safe supply, time to present solutions alongside. The problem, from a political perspective, that logic is understandable. From a public health perspective, it is let. Every hour of silence is an hour of continued exposure. Every minute without a do not drink advisory is a minute in which millions consume contaminated water, and every minute of continued exposure translates into real health consequences that will surface in an already strained medical system. Internationally, this situation is already unfolding beyond the government's control. The World Health Organization has been monitoring water conditions throughout the conflict. Its field teams have documented earlier disruptions. This contamination event cannot remain internal. WHO is in communication with Israel's health ministry, which is in communication with the Prime Minister's office. And while the government remains silent domestically, an international health authority is preparing to issue public guidance based on the same data. The moment that happens, the silence becomes indefensible, not difficult, indefensible. Because it will mean that a foreign organization told Israeli civilians the truth that their own government chose not to. The question now is not military or political, it is public health. How many people have already consumed contaminated water? For how long? At what concentrations? And what will the consequences be? Those answers exist. They are in the monitoring data collected since the moment the missiles struck, and the government that has those answers is watching its population continue to drink the water while deciding whether telling the truth is politically affordable. It cannot afford not to. But it has not realized that yet. Until it does, the taps continue to run, and the people continue to drink. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If the government confirmed contamination within minutes, notified the health ministry, and briefed the Prime Minister's office, at what point does silence in a confirmed public health emergency become criminal negligence toward the 8 million people connected to an unsafe system?